Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's really good to be here today. I think I met Susan and Betty as Stetsons. You remember when that was? I've forgotten.
No, it's a couple of months ago, because Susan had not even been appointed as, she was interim at that point.
Well, I'm reading this book on procrastination. I haven't been able to get to it.
Perfect.
Anyway, did you hear about the Pope visiting Chicago? And he was going to see the Cardinal. And so he was in a limo, and they were late for the meeting. And he got frustrated with the driver. He said, "You don't know where you're going. Pull over, I'm going to drive the limo." So the driver got in the back, and the Pope is speeding through Chicago. And he gets pulled over by a Chicago police officer. The police officer comes up to the limo, and he sees who it is driving. He calls his captain. He says, "Captain, I'm in trouble. I just stopped someone really important." "Well, who is it? The mayor?" "No, more important." "Don't tell me it's the governor." "No, more. Is it the president?" He said, "No." He said, "Well, who is it?" He said, "Well, I'm really not sure. But it must be somebody pretty important because the Pope is his chauffeur." Let me ask you, how many of you, when you were born, by a show of hands, chose your skin color? Oh, you did? Very good. How about the religion of your parents? Your intellect? Your gender? Wow, see? We just kind of pop out. And what you see is what you get. Right? So why should we be treated badly in any respect for something we had no control over? I mean, certainly I would have liked to have been a little bit taller, you know. But now that I fulfilled what I was supposed to be from the beginning, I'm kind of glad I'm short. I just celebrated my birthday last Thursday. You say, "How many birthdays do you have?" I have 3. Is there anyone here with 3? How about, well, I know you have 1, right? How about 2?
Yeah.
You have 2? I have 3. The first one was my natural birth, December 2nd, 1941, 5 days before Pearl Harbor. Most of you are not old enough to remember that. My second birth was March 16th, 1973. And that's when I accepted the Lord. And then my third birth was July 18th, 2006. And so Thursday I turned 7 as Nicole. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. One. No. When did you change your name? Last year.
We have a journey as individuals. You see, our walk on this earth, it's not national, it's not about race, it's not about any of those things.
Going back to baking again.
It's individual. God deals with us as individuals. And what I've discovered through this process, and I was a pastor. Now the very church I pastored in, I couldn't go there as Nicole. Now, isn't that silly? I think Jesus says love everyone, right?
Right.
But somehow they forgot about that. There's a scripture in Galatians 5:1 that says, stand fast in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. And that yoke of bondage is kind of trying to live according to the law, rather than live according to the grace of Jesus, you see. Because we all fall short. But you know what I'm thankful for? I am so thankful that I was born trans. You know why? Knowing this and having this secret. See, I didn't have surgery until I was 64. I didn't come out until I was 66. The fear factor and carrying this secret all those years. Married twice, total of 46 years. Where I was brought up, in fact, did Clarence leave? Clarence and I are from the same neck of the woods up in upstate New York. It's pretty cold up there. But it's not as cold as it is to be tranny. And the fear factor, you see, we all have secrets. Right? Don't you have a secret?
Sure.
But the truth is, we don't have secrets. Our secrets have us. I had so much fear all those years of discovery. What if someone finds out? What if they find out? You lose everything. Most of us have trouble finding employment. We're rejected. Do you know rejection? What's the opposite of rejection?
Acceptance.
Acceptance, yes. Rejection causes the most pain to the human spirit. It's very painful. I just moved in about a year ago to the cat house.
Yeah.
Acronym for College Arms Towers. Affectionately referred to sometimes as, I have to get back to the home. Years ago, 14 years ago, that was one of my responsibilities, but on a very high level in Denver. I had 150,000 apartments, 4,000 employees. Limousine to the airport. I wasn't the pump. But I can tell you, it's a long way down. But I've never been happier in my entire life than I am now. Because all those things, houses, cars, earthly possessions, don't mean anything if you're unhappy. You see? And regardless, we need to hold them at arm's length anyway. Because everything we see around us is temporal. Everything in this building, including the building, will pass away in time. We will. But we have to see beyond the physical and begin looking to the spiritual. The spiritual. The best thing that's happened to me through all of this is I found out who my real friends are. Both of them. And one was my dog. I have a neighbor, his name's Jerry. And Jerry and I have become very good friends. He's 93. Now, Jerry plays bridge 4 times a week. Usually comes in first or second. Drives his own car. And every time he takes me somewhere, I always check his pulse. And Jerry has a love. I think she's in her mid to late 80s. And he's been in love with her for, well, ever since his wife passed away about 9 years ago. And they used to go dancing and have a wonderful time. But you see, she got religion. And she believes you shouldn't dance anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Face that.
Now I think of David. You know, he danced before the Lord with all his might. You see, so it's not what we do in this sense of dancing, it's where our heart is, you see. If we love and dancing is our heart and our God, and it's not right. But if we have fun, the Lord wants us to be happy and be joyful.
Yeah.
So, last night, at the cat house, my friend Laura, Debbie knows her, Debbie and I served on a panel with Laura and a few others as Stetson. And anyway, she goes around and puts on different activities. And so she's been very gracious in coming to the cat house to show us movies. She brought a Celine Dion concert. Now, just get this straight now. Just because we're all older doesn't mean we don't boogie. We're not all sitting around in wheelchairs with walkers and, you know, talking about, you know, what would Granny do? No. Many of us are very active and most of us are ambulatory. I don't want to disappoint you. But there is a feeling when you move into a senior, I don't know if I can make it.
Yeah.
You have a sense of rejection from the general public. Oh, well, that's that building of the old folks up there, and they're all sitting around in wheelchairs. And that's an attack on a person's dignity. See, it's all about treating everyone with dignity and respect. And going back to my friend Jerry, he likes me to come over and have a cocktail with him at 4:30 every day. He gets lonely. And we just have a good time. We watch Andy Griffith. And who was his sidekick?
Barney.
Barney, yes. And we laugh. We have such a good time. And he has a beautiful smile. Well, his girlfriend, he told her about Nicole. Now, she lives in one of these fancy, you know, $1,500 a month apartments. And so he invited her to come and see Phantom of the Opera. To join him. He was going to go down, take her to dinner, and bring her to see Phantom. She came, about a month ago when we had Ginger, the singer, come and entertain us, and she had a wonderful time. But once she found out that this strange woman she met is transgender, she wouldn't go with him last night.
Makes no sense.
You know, God hates religion. He really does. But he loves faith. And I didn't feel bad for myself because we've been there before, you see. But I felt bad for Jerry. But I also felt bad for Jeannie. She was a beauty queen back in the 50s. Won beauty, she was a beauty contestant, won several awards. Gorgeous woman. But she got religion. So don't get religion! But I was heartbroken for him yesterday afternoon. And it was hard to laugh at Barney because of the pain that inflicts on people when you're rejected. But if I hadn't been born this way, I probably would not have been as successful in life, depending on how you measure success, as I have been. Oh, I was making $250,000 a year, limousines taking me to the airport, bringing me back. And I had my panties on under my $1,200 suit. Or my toes painted maybe, and oh dear God, my mother told me there'd be days like this. What if I get in an accident? It's frightening. But you know what? There is liberty. You see, all of us are different people. We're different when we're here in a group setting. We're different when we're laying in bed by ourselves. Or we're different with our family, perhaps, than we are in public. And one of the goals I've had is to be the same person all the time. To be the same person. Be transparent. I don't have anything to be ashamed of. I'm finally who I was meant to be 71 years ago. And it doesn't matter that my best friend I play golf with every week won't speak to me anymore. But that's what comes with the territory. But I am so happy I can't stand it. I carry on with my old folks' friends at the cat house. They elected me president of the association. I mean, how silly can that be? And one of the most difficult challenges, I'm being hit on by all these men. Oh, you're so beautiful. Listen, could we go do the town, honey? What do I do now? You know, I kind of still like girls. You know? Anyway, I got a love letter one day. I was working behind the desk as a receptionist. And he hands me this envelope. And I open it up, and it was the gushiest. I'm in love with you. I want to be in a relationship with you. Whew. What do I do now, Lord? And so, remembering my days as Chuck, and how difficult it is for men to have a woman. You remember when we were young and we saw that pretty girl in high school and wanted to ask her out to the prom? And you're so afraid she's going to turn you down. Well, would you mind asking her for me, Howard, please? You know. But that helped because I knew I had to deal with this in a way that would not be injurious to him. And so I waited a couple days, and when I saw him, I said, would you be kind enough to come down to the library with me? And we sat there, and I said, thank you so much for that beautiful letter. It really touched my heart. I have to tell you, though, that I've not been very good at relationships. And I'm not ready for one yet. But you're a very nice person, and I hope you'll forgive me. And I got up and gave him a hug. Everything was fine, you see. But some of the things we go through, you'll never experience, chances are. Only a person in these shoes can share that. And then being made. Oh my God. Is that a man or a woman? Oh, you see the head turn. You can almost read the eyes. It's amazing. Ever experienced that? Anybody? So, it's forced me to try harder in everything that I do. 150%. So I am so thankful that I was born this way. But the most important thing it's done for me is my spiritual life. I could go buy anything. I had a platinum American Express card. My American Express bill in a year was over $100,000 a year. The bill, American Express. I could buy anything. And I found myself at the cat house without a car, but I have a chauffeur. And I ran out of food a couple of times. But you know what it did for me? I've learned this, and it's very important. I've been a Christian since 1973, March 16th. Never realized that was 3:16, like John 3:16. March 16th was my second birthday. But what I learned was, and church is wonderful, and I love this church. I'm thinking about joining. All right. But what I discovered is, and we grow at church, but you know where we really grow? In a one-on-one, on your knees, every morning with Jesus. And I'm not saying it's right for you. It took me a long time. I could go in the church and I could lead the worship. I could preach. I taught doctrine. But I never took seriously that private time with just me and Jesus. Because you see, when you're there, on your face before Him, there are no lies. Everything's exposed. You're really naked before Him. And I'm not trying to tell you how to walk your walk, but this has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I see so many miracles. I have a prayer list with about 100 people on it. I don't pray every morning, but probably most mornings. And then I read the scriptures. And before I read the scriptures, I say, Lord, open my heart and my soul and my mind to receive your word. You see? And what a difference that I said, I never saw that before. That's beautiful. You see? And I can kind of just sit back and live my life and be happy and watch Him go before me and do all these miracles. Hardest thing, too, is to love somebody that you don't like. Oh, no, Lord, I don't want to pray for that. Don't tell me that. Early in my career, I had an accounting, a minor in accounting. So I became the controller of this property management company. My boss was mean. He was so mean. I mean, he would yell and scream, and everybody would leave the office. And I'd have to go get in the hallway of a 10-story building so no one would see me cry. He was vicious. But I learned a lot from him, mainly about how not to treat people. And he had a secretary, Joanne, and she was a knockout. Oh my goodness. But she knew it. And so after I became a Christian, I was still working there, and we became a little overzealous talking about the Lord. So she'd go running into my boss. Chuck's out here, he's out here talking about religious stuff. And, you know, I was a little crazy back then. And so anyway, we got our fannies chewed out. I had my panties on, if that's the question. And I was praying one night because I was so miserable. And I said, Lord, get me out of here. I can't take it. I've never been so unhappy in my life, and I'm laying in bed. And it was almost like he said, well, Chuck, what if it's my perfect will for you to stay there the rest of your career? Oh, no, I can't do that. Oh, no, Lord, you can't possibly mean that. He's right. He mostly is, you know. And so I surrendered. And I said, Lord, if that's your perfect will. See, we can either be in his perfect will or his permissive will. And it's so much better to be in his perfect will. But it takes me a long time to get that, you know, through the ears. 2 weeks after that prayer, I was offered a position with another company that doubled my salary. Doubled. Not 10%, not 20%, double. You see. The problem wasn't my boss. Me. I had the wrong focus. You see. And getting back to Joanne. Oh, this is so cool. Anyway. I became very spiritual. You know. And so I'm in church this one Sunday. And all of a sudden I look over. There's Joanne. What in the world is she doing here? She's the one that turned me in. She saw me. She came over. She said, I have to ask your forgiveness for what I did to you.
Wow.
I said, I already have forgiven you a long time ago. Say. So, she became a congresswoman in the 1st District of Virginia. And I think she served 3 terms and then passed away with breast cancer. But I know where she is. I know I'll see her. As Pastor Susan said this morning, you know, we're going to be set free from this earthly tabernacle. And we'll have a spiritual body. And I know the mind can only absorb what the fanny can endure. Nicole, keep a straight face. My favorite scripture, Galatians 3, verse 28. And I'll close with this, and then we'll have a time. And let me share. No question to me is sacred. I don't care how personal your question might be, because it's about educating people and breaking them out of ignorance regarding gender. It's so important that we accept people where they are. After all, isn't that what Jesus does?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry! You can't be in my kingdom because you're a tranny, or you're a lesbian, or you're gay, or you're black. I can't find that in here. In fact, Galatians 3:28 says, There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is either bond nor free. And there is neither, I love this, male or female. We are all one in the sight of God. Thank you very much. Thank you. The before picture.
Wow. Impressed? Did you see it?
I had to beat the women off for a long time. Now I'm having to beat the men off. No, we are. I was married the first time 36 years and had 4 wonderful children. My first wife was very helpful. She would buy me clothes and makeup, and we had to sneak around the kids. But I didn't even know at that time that I was transgender. I just said, oh, I kind of like these panties. But she cooperated. But my background is kind of Presbyterians that never went to church, you know, the frozen chosen. And so when you make a commitment in life, it's like marriage. I never intended to get divorced. I'm a great believer in meeting the obligations that I have. And I stuck it out. But it wasn't easy. And that's why. And then you're always looking for a solution. My second marriage, I always had my stash too. My secret closet, you know. And I purged 3 times. When I became a Christian, I said, that's it, get rid of these clothes, take them out to the dumpster. Then when I met my second wife, I said, this is the answer. I love her so much, and I'll be cured. I'll be fine. I said, pressure, excuse me. And it doesn't work. But you know, she was so good, she stayed with me through the whole transition. When I was coming out of surgery in Trinidad, Colorado, coming out of the anesthetic, I look at the foot of my bed, and there's my wife and 3 nurses, and they're going, oh my God, doesn't like that look nice. She did a wonderful job. I said, give me a blanket, for God's sakes. Down there checking me out. That was my first gyno inspection. Yes, sir.
Yeah. My question is, why do you believe that when trans people, when they come out, or they're all happy and everything when they first come out, and then they begin to find spirituality, and it makes them do what you did, like throw away your female clothes and stuff like that? Why do you suppose that is?
I think, at least, I can't speak for every person who is trans.
For you?
Yeah, for me it was about probably wanting to be normal. Yeah.
What is normal?
Exactly. But see, within ourselves sometimes we don't understand. And I said, that's it. Gone. So when I met Amy, I had this big shipping trunk filled with my stash and a big padlock. And I kept the keys around my neck. No, I didn't. But anyway, when we got engaged, I took it to the dumpster. And I was cured for about 3 days. But although we all have a lot in common as trans folk, we're all individuals. And I'm counseling right now with about 7 other people. One in south of France, one a police officer in Texas. scared to death. No one knows about them except me, but they have someone to talk with. So each of our walks are individual. But if you hear every person's story, I was putting nail polish on behind an overstuffed chair when I was 3 years old. You see, and I'm sure my parents were horrified. So we always hope that we can not be this way, because I think along the way we learn that there is a price. And it goes back to the sermon. Are you willing to give everything up for Jesus? Are you willing to give everything up to be Nicole? And it took me a long time to accept that. You know, we all lie. Sometimes to ourselves. We say, oh, I don't lie. Oh yeah, we all lie. Does this outfit make me look fat? Next question. Yes, Mark.
One of the things that I've noticed is that there seems to be so much misconception about transgender. And I studied the 2011 task force study which came out, and it identified the level of stigma, prejudice at such an incredibly inhumane level, where we're talking about suicides at probably 40%.
Thank you, Teresa. Hi.
And higher in, those that are working in the sex trade or in tougher situations, maybe as high as 60%. And that it's staggering. It's like 78 or 80% have all been victimized. I mean, what do you say to those people who find themselves in that situation, that are trying to overcome these obstacles, which are seemingly impossible to deal with? I mean, it's one thing to say Jesus and the faith, but, it's like, I spend a lot of time working with homeless people. And one thing I learned in that process is you can't just talk to people about Jesus when they're in dire situations.
Absolutely. You're right.
They won't hear you.
That's right.
It'll go right over.
I find food works very well.
Yes. Actually, food does work very well, especially for the homeless. The first question is, well, what are you going to do for me, Mark?
Yes.
What are you going to do for me?
And that's a basic human need.
And so what do we do to try to help those that are in those situations that seemingly are just impossible, where the threat of suicide is very, very high, and basically it's bleak without hope for so many?
Absolutely. And we're stuck in the middle. We're probably the most marginalized citizens in all the culture. What Mark is saying is so true. In 2012, 40 transgender were murdered. Just in the last 3 months, 2. One in Orlando, one up in Ohio. Came out of their work and were tracked down, followed, and shot. Shot in the head. There's so much hate. Suicide rate for us is 40%. That means 4 out of every 10 of us commit suicide either pre-op or post-op. I've been there twice. When I was in my 20s, I was so frustrated. I went to the cemetery where my father's buried, and I had a rifle under my chin. It was only thinking about my children that kept me from doing that, and that strong sense of obligation. And then after surgery, I had a $400,000 house in the very country club. I'm laying in bed, and it's finally happening. The house is going. Everything's going. What do I do? with all this stuff, what did I ever see about it that I felt I had to have it? But I had my pistola under my pillow and a bottle of Oxy, and I was ready to go. 40%. One of the most difficult things for us is financial. I have a very dear friend who's female to male. Now, socially, and I can't speak for female to male trans folks, but it seems to me socially it's a little easier. Because after all, we women are second class, you know. So they'll accept a man going from female to male. But when you go from male to female, ooh, spooky, spooky. So it's tough. I mean, suicide, if people are honest with you, is there. And probably one of at the top of the list is financial. My transition, when I had everything up over about a 7-year period, was $150,000. And I had the money. I saw a young gal in Trinidad. She didn't have the money. That's when they kill themselves. So financial. We need to have some grant money available for folks like us, because they get so frustrated. I thought about mutilation, self-mutilation in my early 20s. I had visions of taking a shotgun and getting rid of what didn't belong there. So, you see, this is all part of my being transparent. But anyway, if we're honest with ourselves, not just trannies, but every one of us, the normal folks too, then we can begin to heal. And I'm healed. And I'm happy. And I have the victory. And I have never been happier in my entire life. Next. Yes, thank you. Yes, sir, in the back, and then I'll come back to you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Ladies before gentlemen, I get to pull that ring now. Okay, the girls have to stick together, so you go first.
Being that you were married and had children, it's a hard question. How did you tell your children, and how are you with your children today?
That is a great question. My oldest son is 53. He lives in Northern Virginia. He has a company that he and I started together. They don't accept me. Their 2 children, one is a senior at William & Mary, and I never see them anymore. My second son, and they don't communicate with me at all. My second son is a car salesman. He's very successful. He makes $100,000 a year selling Nissans. And when I told him, I sent letters to each of them. A copy of that letter is in my website, transgenderwoman.net. And I called my youngest son. I said, "Hi, Mark." I said, "Oh, hi, Dad. Can I still call you Dad?" I said, "Yes." "I'll have to call you back." I don't know. So I cried for a while, then I called him back. I said, "Dad, I'm with you 150%. You're my dad." I flew up there, a couple months later, and I had a beautiful suite at the Marriott. He came to my suite. He had a beautifully gift-wrapped Macy's bag with a $400 Donnybrook purse for me. Now that's love. My 2 daughters don't speak. But that's okay. You know why? You remember in the gospel where Jesus was ministering in a house. And one of the disciples came in and said, Master, your mother, your brother, your sister are outside. And he looked around and he said, here, my mother, my brother, my sister. You see, we're complete in Jesus. Yeah, family's important, but again, it's temporal. And so that's the only solace that I have. But that's a great question. And it's different for every person. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask the exact same question that I was asking.
Would you like the same answer?
It's different.
Yes, sir. Thomas.
I think for a lot of this, the sexual orientation part of trans people is hard for us to understand. So in your case, if you don't mind my asking a very personal question, it sounds like you're pretty much committed to sort of being single from now on.
Yes.
But if Miss Wright came along, would it be a woman who kind of identifies as a heterosexual woman or a lesbian or not? None of the above.
That's a great question. I get that all the time. No, see, to me, it's not about gender. It's about the person.
There you go.
More than anything, you know. And I think of my friend Christine. She's a medical doctor, Christine McGinn. I don't know if you know about her. She was a Navy pilot when he was a he. And before he had surgery, he stored some of his sperm. Well, he met, or she met, after she became Christine, and fell in love with a gal who was a lesbian. They impregnated her with the sperm, and they had twin children, a boy and a girl. Wow. Yeah. And so, you know, a lot depends, of course, on finances, but it's more a matter of the bonding of the hearts between two people. I don't know if you've ever been in love before, individually. Well, love is a very deep, often misunderstood situation, even within ourselves. And I'm not sure I've fully discovered that yet. But half of us remain, I'm talking about male to female, remain still liking women. The other half like men. My girlfriend Laura, that was on the panel, she has a boyfriend. And she'd call me, Nicole, I was asked out, it just didn't work, I haven't heard from him. And this went on through 4 or 5 different people. Then all of a sudden, wow, they met. He was a captain on a ship in Tampa. They fell in love. They're building a house together. I mean, they came, will you show us how to do these certain things to make the house accessible? And they're like two lovebirds. It's incredible. So, I don't know, honestly, for me right now, I would have to say I'm more asexual. You know, I've done my share of diddling in my time. Yes, sir.
Your wife now, be attracted to her?
Yes. Now, my first wife, not so much. She kind of got mean. But I still have a love for her because we were high school sweethearts, you know. My second wife, who, when I came out to her, I was in tears. I was drinking 7, 8 highballs a night and go off to bed drunk. And I love her very much, I still do. And finally, one night before Christmas, she said, "What in the world is wrong with you?" And I just totally broke down. And after a lot of coaxing and reassuring, I told her. And she said, "Whew, I thought you were having an affair." And we got on the computer and we found an endocrinologist in Los Angeles. And she went with me through everything.
Wow.
Psychiatrist for a year, psychologist, hormone treatments for 5 years, surgery. Never left. I had a suite in Trinidad, Colorado at the hotel. She refused to leave my hospital room. I had a private room. She slept on a window box for 6 nights and wouldn't leave me. So, am I not going to help her the rest of her life if I can?
Yeah.
You bet your boots. You know, she's precious.
But are you sexually attracted?
Yes. Yes. You know, I was going to say something like, I better not. Yes, ma'am.
Did they tell you you should have your hormones checked? I think you said you wanted to go home. Did they say that to you?
I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah. Did they say that?
they did blood work. And the doctor I found in LA I like because he does pellets instead of injections or pills. Most girls take pills. John does pellets where you lay on the table and he cuts a hole in your little backside and inserts these pellets. I would typically get 8 estrogen pellets and 4 progesterone. And they were time release. And so what that does, you avoid the PMS and the, don't talk to me now, you know. And so
Where is your last wife now? Is she not in your life?
she is, very much, but she's in Oklahoma City right now. Kind of swept up in that area. She has a girlfriend there, they're roommates. And I talk with her almost every day. She has my car, after all. No, she was wonderful with me. And, you know, when you're transitioning and you know, I had a business in Lake Mary. I had 250 employees. And in the main headquarters office, there were 12 of us. I was the only man. And one day, the ladies in the office says, Chuck, we have to come and talk with you. We're having trouble with our husbands. Well, this ought to be good. Drag a chair. So they're all sitting around my desk. They get upset. They want our full attention all the time. We're trying to read some of these books. They were into all these new, I don't know what they were. And I'm sitting there as they're telling me all this. And usually with girls, you just have to be a good listener. I don't have any special talent, but I do have a different perspective than most people because I've lived both, you see. And I'm sitting there and saying, wouldn't they be surprised if they knew I had a vagina?
Wow.
Next. Yes, sir.
What advice do you have for people that are actually in a relationship with the transgender?
I don't like to give love advice. I haven't been very successful. I worked with an architect, designer. His name, won't give you his name, his initials were Art Floyd, I think. And I said to him one time, I said, how do you know when you're decorating these model apartments for me, when to put this piece of art here, or this painting here, or this? Oh, he said, simple. When in doubt, leave it out. I said, well, that kind of applies to life, too. Again, it's about being honest with yourself. Because, see, I messed up a couple times bad. I cheated on my first wife. I mean, we'd been sleeping apart for over 7 years. I slept on the sofa, of course. But next time I'm going to reverse that. There are advantages, you know. I forgot where I was going with that. Early Alzheimer's, but I'm meeting lots of nice people. I'm sorry. I think it's, again, individual. And sometimes we don't know if we're in love or not. We really don't. But if you have that special relationship, hold on to it, but don't hold it too close, because it's like a flower. And if you crush it, the beauty will go out of the relationship. We can't control other people. We cannot. Susan, you must love me. After all, look at what I've done for you. What a bunch of narcissists we are. But you can't force someone to love you, to stay with you. And I like to call it putting those things on the altar, like Abraham did with Isaac. I mean, years and years, he even did what Nicole or Chuck did. I didn't impregnate anybody. He went with Hagar. You know. And then years later, after Ishmael was born, Sarah became pregnant and he had Isaac. And what's the first thing the Lord said? Give him back to me. And so what I've tried to apply in my own life are those things that I think are so important. I have to be willing to put them on the altar. And I know if it's his perfect will for me, he'll give that situation back to me. And if he doesn't, I don't want it. You see? Right. So, next question. This is fun. Oh, I'm sorry, Reverend.
Do you think the turning point for you was when you completed transition?
That's an excellent question.
Well, repeat the question, please.
Repeat your
Was the turning point for me after I completed my so-called final surgery? It's not the end all, because transition never ends. I had a situation recently, I'll demonstrate. Yes, it helped, because even though I had surgery, I didn't come out for 3 more years because I had my own business and I didn't want 250 people to be out of work. So I worked around that. But transition never ends. Never ends. And you can be rocking along pretty good and you get smacked right between the eyes. But that's true for everybody. Life is not necessarily going to be perfect. And for someone to pretend, oh, everything's just great. Well, I've been in the apartment business 40 years. And if you forgive me for saying it, I'm damn good at it. And the 2 ladies in the office at the cat house have been there, well, one for 14 years because I used to be her big boss. And the other one about 3 years. And when I was losing my house, and I gave it back to the bank because it was the right thing to do. I didn't want to live there free and force them into foreclosure. It wouldn't have been right. And the real estate agent called me. She says, well, I suppose you took all the appliances and everything out of the house. I said, I beg your pardon? I'm a real estate broker in 2 states. Challenge my intelligence, but not my integrity.
All right.
The stainless steel appliances are still there, along with everything else, and it's clean as a whistle. See? Now I forgot the question. It's my ex from Oklahoma City. I have a church bell for her. And she's very persistent. I should have turned it off. Then she'll send me 7 messages. Nicole, are you here? Where are you? Yes, sir, Tom.
I think it's great you were at Stetson a few months ago. Do you ever have an opportunity to go into any of the high schools around here at all?
I have.
Age level?
Yeah, I have not here, but that's a group that really needs to hear the truth. I got a letter from Wendy Libby, the president, a couple weeks ago, and she's invited me back to work. Jamil, I think you might, he's on a sabbatical to Palestine, and she's asked me to work with a new person on gender studies, so I'm looking forward to that. You know, that'll continue. And I do speak. I'm scheduled to speak over in New Smyrna at a UCC church in October, and I'm going up to the SCC conference. Debbie and I talked about it earlier up in Atlanta. There'll be 1,000 to 1,200 trannies up there, you know, and it's really more for people transitioning, but it's still wonderful. And in fact, I was there 3 years ago, and Marcy Bowers, who did my surgery, always has a suite there with a cocktail reception. Well, it's her business. And so she saw me, "Oh, Nicole, how you doing?" Gave me a hug. I said, "Well, Marcy, I'm glad you remembered me. I thought I might have to come to your reception walking on my hands." Sorry. I'm getting punchy. Yes, sir?
And I guess a related question. Do you happen to know in this area, are there any teachers who are allowed to be trans, openly trans in their classrooms?
I don't. See, a lot of us prefer to be stealth. And for me, remembering the pain I went through by not even knowing what was wrong with me, and no one to talk with. Were you going to talk with your parents? Right. You know, scared to death. And that's how it is for most of us. So it's very tough. So I purposely do this and have my website. And as I said, I'm working with 7 different girls in various stages. One just finished her surgery in Thailand. And she calls me like 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, "What's wrong with you, girl? You're in St. Louis. You're an hour behind me. Don't you ever sleep?" You know. Yes.
Did you ever talk to Cher because of her daughter?
I've never spoken with her. I've met Chaz. Yeah, he typically attends the SCC conference. Debbie, did you have a comment on it?
Well, I had a comment earlier about that, about trans in like the school.
Yeah.
Volusia County doesn't allow it currently, for grade schools and high schools, but the state colleges are very supportive.
Yeah, I know Daytona State has a group. Okay, well, there's the professors. So, anyway, we need the high school approach. And I was on a panel at UCC or at the Unitarian Church in Orange City about 2 years ago. And one of the ladies on the panel, who is lesbian, said she's a high school teacher. And she's having trouble introducing that education, but she does have a group of young people that are trans that she works with. So it's needed so much more. Mark, we've talked about young people and attracting young people to this church, because most of the trannies that I speak with, and forgive the slang, but we refer to ourselves that way, get away from me with that Jesus stuff. You can't possibly love me. I'm probably the only Christian tranny in the whole world this way, you know. But the problem is the churches, their religion, you see. I'm not allowed to dance anymore. And besides, if your neighbor's trans, I can't come to see you anymore. See? And that's what turns so many people off in our community about church. And that's why this is so precious.
That's right.
We have something here in the community, and the word needs to get out where people can come and be accepted for who we are. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I know this is a very accepting environment, but do you find in general in the gay and lesbian community that transgender persons are marginalized within that community?
That's a great question. I think there's probably some truth to that, because a lot of the LG folks don't understand trans either. See? And I've been going to a group called Over the River. I was sharing with Mark, and they meet like at Olive Garden in Orange City once a month kind of thing. And they're wonderful. And I mean, I see them around town, and I always get a hug. So that group, it's been around for 17 years, they kind of accept us. But the truth of the matter is, sadly, that we're all marginalized. But I think those of us that are trans, it's worse. Probably the way it was with lesbians and gays 30 years ago. And we don't really fit in to that group. Now, I might have a little better chance because I like girls, so I'm a lesbian, see. But I think there is kind of a polarization there, sadly. But I think it's a lack of understanding. They're very accepting. I mean, I get hugs all over the place, especially when I come here. But I love that you hug. You know?
Oh, we do all the time.
Yeah, make sure you wear your deodorant. But that's an excellent question. But here's the other part of why that's so important that we're part of that community. And that's politically. See, because those of us that are trans are so few compared to the gay and lesbian community nationwide. And it gives us a voice that we may not otherwise have. And the other thing with trans, you know, I just love gay people because they're so out and so accepting. But as a trans especially, and I don't want to marginalize male to female or female to male, it's just the fear factor, I think, is greater for us in some respects. Boy, the first time I wore a dress, I'm telling you, man, pretty scary. Oh, I was going to tell you about the two ladies in the office. So I'm down there working for free. And everybody's trying to lose weight. So I convinced them, let's go for a walk during lunch hour every day and walk 2-3 miles. I don't know if we can walk that far, Nicole. And so anyway, we're going out for these walks. And later on, one of them said, well, you know, Nicole, you still have a lot of man left in you. You always have to walk in front of us. And, or you walk like this. You know what? I'm kind of over that. You know, I just go, oh, that's so cute. And for some of the girls, some of my dearest friends are just tall and have big hands and feet, you know. And the whole time I was dropped from the basketball team because I stopped growing. Now I'm so thankful. You know? But I mean, I have relatively small feet and hands. But my sisters, who are built differently, it's a real struggle for them. And voice never changes. You know, you have to really work at it. Now, if I'm with you here as Nicole, my voice, I'm sure, sounds fine. But I'm always sirred on the phone. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Well, better my talk to you this way. What's the matter with you? Don't confuse lipstick for weakness. Mark, that doesn't get their attention. Yes, sir.
You've gone all through this transition with your choice at the beginning and at the end, but do you ever have a feeling that you just come in for a second where you say, oh, I wish I was a man?
Yes. Yes. That's a very good question. Very good question. But then, I gave away all my $1,200 suits and pants and shorts. So what's a girl to do? No, I'm sorry. I tend to get a little silly sometimes, but the answer to that is yes, and there have been times when the going really got tough. And I'm Nicole in bed by herself. And it's been really hard. I had one lady in the building refer to me as a he-she. I cried for 2 days. I never did anything to her, you know.
Ignorance.
Yeah. And so sometimes I have said, you know, damn, I wish I had kept that one suit. No, their doubts do creep in.
Was she a straight person? That said that to you?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And not only that, she's pretty mean too. You know, so yeah, that has happened to me probably half a dozen times over the past 7 years. Yes, but it doesn't last long because I remember how miserable I was as Chuck. It was awful. Nothing can ever replace the happiness I found by just being myself. Questions? I know you. Oh, I guess the mind can absorb. Oh, yes, sir.
I just brainstormed that several times you referred to the clothing. And we seem to talk about the clothing a lot. So is that a lot more than just a joke? Is it a truism that just the way a person dresses makes them feel different? Or?
I think there's some truth to that. You hear women especially say, I just feel so beautiful. Yeah, they say clothes makes the man. We put so much emphasis on gender in this country. It's all about gender. You know, look at the person, know the person, and love them. And I hug the men and the women in the building. There's a couple that don't deserve it. Yeah. Those are the hard ones. The first prayer group I was in, it was like seeing Joanne in church that time. What the heck is she doing here? And so this place is packed with about 60 people. And we're worshiping, and the doorbell rings. And outside the door is a woman who probably has not bathed in 6 months. You could smell her from the doorway. And the hostess of the house went over and gave her as big a hug and welcome as she did anyone else. So, and that's how we're supposed to be. Admittedly difficult sometimes, but I try to do that. But there are times, oh my God, you didn't shave this morning. You're trying to kiss me. What the hell's the matter with you? You know, go home and take a bath. You know, I tend to be pretty outspoken. You know, but as a girl, I can get away with a lot more stuff. No one wants to beat me up until they find out. They were asking me out, and they find out I'm trans, and they really get pissed. You know, and that's where the danger of murder comes in. And that's why you have to handle that so carefully.
Why do you have to say that?
Say what? It comes out eventually. It's the worst kept secret in the world. You know, my friend Susan Stamp was the city manager in Largo, Florida. And she came out, 17 years city manager, they fired her. So she was very out, you know, she was on Larry King and things like that. You never escape it. Once you're out publicly, oh, you're speaking as Stetson, we saw that in the paper, what's that all about? Oh, well, I'm working on my PhD. Past having doubt. So, again, it's individual. You know, a lot of the guys and gals want to be stealth, but they're passed away. It's easy if you move to another town. I mean, that's the ideal situation. A lot of them don't have money for surgery and hormones. I just got a call from one of the professors. Well, my wife has a nephew who wants to be a niece, you know. So I'm working with her, and she's young. And the parents don't know what to do. And they don't have the money. and don't know how to get hormones. I self-prescribed for about 3 years. Got my estrogen from Europe.
In-house pharmacy.
Expensive though. Woo. You know, I'd get that brown box in the mail and I couldn't wait to get home and swallow a half dozen. And then look and say, how are they coming?
Okay, I was gonna ask you. You have a clitoris, you have a mark, and then.
Boy, that is a great question.
She had to both ask that question.
Does this answer the question?
What was the question?
Do I have a clitoris? And do I have a...
Orgasm.
Oh, is that what that's called? Now we're finally getting down to the real day. The answer to both questions is yes. Back in the day, I don't know if you remember Christine Jorgensen, 1951 or 2, went to Denmark. And back then, they just cut everything off and left a pee hole. Okay? No vagina. Now it's become very sophisticated. My surgeon, Marcy, creates a totally functional... You're the one asking the questions. I'm just trying to answer them. Anyway. So it is functional. And you want me to be graphic here?
Yeah, absolutely.
The first thing I did when I'd been on hormones for about 4 or 5 years is I found a doctor in South Florida that would perform a bilateral orchiectomy, castration. And the reason I went down there and did that is because he donated my testicles for cancer research. And it was an interim step that enabled me to cut back on the amount of hormones that I had to take, because now, no testes, no testosterone. But another not so well-known fact is some of the other glands in your body will start producing it. Genetics are a pretty strong driving force in our lives. So then after that, and of course you have to get a letter from a psychiatrist. And the killing part for us is not just financial, is that we have all these gatekeepers to our happiness that aren't transgendered. What the hell do you mean I have to dress as a girl for a year? Do I lose my business, you fool? If I don't know what I want by now at 64, I was 60 at the time, I guess. They said, Nicole, you're ready. You know? So I never had to do that real life experience. But when Marcy does the surgery, essentially, the penile skin is removed and put on a tray. And 2 major insertions are made down each side. And they take the penile skin and put it around a plastic tube and create the internal part of the vagina, which they later insert and sew into place. And the clitoris is basically the end of your penis. And it's very sensitive. And yes, I can have a climax.
I kind of have an answer, because, well, actually, this is proven too, honestly. It's a lot easier for an MTF person to have bottom surgery, because it's a lot easier for the surgeons to make a hole versus to make a hole. So it's a little bit more difficult for someone that's...
I like that. I'll have to remember to use that.
So what you're saying is it's harder to create a penis.
Right. They stretch it out as much as they can, and they'll take one of your bones that'll actually give you an actual erection, and then they make it. I mean, we don't have balls, so they have to make, they're like
prosthetic
balls, yeah.
But it's much more expensive.
Yes.
Even though female to male is socially more acceptable, surgically it's very, very expensive, which makes it even more difficult. I have a friend, I'm not going to mention his name, his initials are Liam, and But anyway,
I didn't get that.
he's trying to get a grant just to have top surgery because he's so tired of wearing binders, you know. And so I think the guys have a much harder time than we do. It's easier to take something away than to add it. So the other thing that happens, phantom pain.
Huh? Huh?
I mean, 5 months after my surgery, I'm waking up and man, my testicles are aching like they never did before. But they're not there. See, my brain hadn't caught up with my body.
Oh, like an amputation.
It's called phantom pain. It's like losing a limb. Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy. But basically, our outie, in our case, becomes an innie. Because all the parts are used, pretty much.
Well.
So, any other questions? Yes, sir, Norm.
One of the things I've observed, especially with the younger folks, talking about male to female, there seems to be so much emphasis on the cosmetic aspect of, well, I'm going to have my breasts done, I'm going to have my cheeks done, I'm going to have this, and before long, the whole body is just kind of been reconstructed. But it doesn't seem to be necessarily transgender. I mean, I'm talking about, that element that's kind of what I would call drag queen.
Females.
Females.
Yeah.
I don't know what you call it. But how do you, I don't know what I want to say here.
Spit it out, spit it out.
Could you just comment on that whole process? It seems like a lot of effort going into the cosmetic side rather than individual development to really determine, are you ready for this? I mean, you're making some changes that
Pretty permanent.
it's not going to be easy to undo it.
Well,
And
yeah, that would be a little difficult. Where to go, But again, we're talking about individuals. Now, I'm not a drag queen. I mean, most of us aren't. Drag queens are usually gay guys that perform as women.
Yeah.
My friend Lee Shannon, Ritzy Rags, right? Lee's wonderful. I get my wigs in. Anyway, Lee is wonderful, but see, he's not transgender.
Yeah.
And so, again, that's perhaps why we don't. Going back to your question back here, I'm sorry, what is your name? Les?
Russ.
No, the young lady.
Sabrina.
Sabrina, going back to your question, see, we really don't fit in the purest sense. But yet, we're all family. We're all marginalized by society. And for that reason, we need to stick together and support each other.
Absolutely.
So, all right, we have time for one more question. Please don't get any more personal. It's embarrassing. I still take hormones. I get one estrogen shot once a month. My nurse comes and gets me with it. Yes, sir.
This is, I guess, more of a social question. I mean, it's great we had this group today. You've done your Stetson thing. You'll be at United Church of Christ in a couple of months or whenever. Is there any kind of organization that unites all these little groups, or does your website, does it function as kind of a network? Or?
Well, I haven't really put other resources on there because one thing I'm very careful about. I don't care who you talk to, what tranny, it's post-op, okay? As an example, when I went down to have the bilateral orchiectomy, I walked over to the free breakfast at the hotel, and obviously this gal was trans, and I said, "Can I sit with you?" I'm Nicole, but I was dressed as a guy then. And she said, "Are you going to see Dr. Sloan?" I said, "Yes." "He's the most wonderful doctor. He did my surgery, my GRS." "Oh, when did you have that done?" "Oh, about 6 months ago." "What are you doing back here?" "Well, I need a few corrections." But to her, he's the best doctor in the world. You see, we all do that. And so for me, I don't want to recommend a specific surgeon or psychiatrist or psychologist or endocrinologist. I say, okay, here are some resources. This is what worked for me, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Okay? We love as human beings to have someone else take responsibility for us. Then we can blame them if it doesn't go right. I don't want to be in that category. Is that it? Any other questions? You guys have been terrific. I love you. Thank you.
Can I ask one question? Can I ask one question?
Of course.
How do you feel about people, trans people who don't necessarily want surgery?
Again, it's individual. I have another friend who's an air traffic controller over on the East Coast. She's a pilot, right? She's gone and had some facial stuff. She's, I think, had a boob job. I never had a boob job, by the way. Hormones work for me. Plus, I'm a little chubby, so that helps. But I talked with her yesterday, and I said, well, when are you going to have your surgery? She said, I don't know. I might wait till next summer sometime. She's not in any hurry. And then some decide never to have that. So sometimes it's financial. Most of the time.
Very expensive.
Yes, very expensive. And the rest of the time, they're just not ready yet. It's a big decision. But I don't want people that aren't trans telling me what I can't do.
There you go.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
I'm waiting for you. I'm not